10 years ago, the head of one of the world's premier fashion houses disappeared while flying in a small plane over a set of picturesque islands off the coast of Venezuela. But it hasn't been the only plane to disappear there. Is this the new Bermuda Triangle? I'm Andrew Colon. Find out the truth about the disappearance of Vittorio Missoni on the Mysteries of Latin America podcast. Welcome to the Mysteries of Latin America podcast, where we dive deep into the myths, legends, ancient sites, mysterious beasts, paranormal activities, extraterrestrial phenomena, and surreal stories taking place in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean. My name is Andrew Colon, and for the last 30 years I've lived and worked in Latin America, and I've seen some wild things and heard even wilder stories. And each week I share one of them with you here on the podcast. This week I'll tell you the story of the disappearance of Vittorio Missoni, the leader of the famous Missoni fashion house of Milan. We'll tell you what happened to him and his fellow travelers, the shock and confusion following his disappearance, and other mysterious disappearances in the same area that might lead you to think that there's a new Devil's Triangle in the Caribbean. Stay tuned, passengers. There might be some turbulence on this flight, so strap in, keep your tray tables in an upright position, and make sure to subscribe and follow the Mysteries of Latin America podcast so you never miss an episode. Enjoy your flight. The date was January 4th, 2013. Vittorio Missoni, his wife Maurizia Castiglioni, and their friends Guido Foresti and Ella Scalvenzi took off from the tourist destination of Los Roques Island, headed towards Simón Bolívar International Airport in Caracas, Venezuela. The four had spent the Christmas and New Year's holidays on a fishing expedition in the Los Roques archipelago and were headed back to Italy to start the new year. Missoni was expected to attend Men's Fashion Week in Milan the following week, but the plane he was in disappeared from radar shortly after taking off from the island, and suspicions were raised when the plane didn't show up as scheduled in Caracas. Vittorio Missoni was the CEO and leader of the Missoni fashion house. Vittorio was the eldest son of Ottavio Missoni, the founder of the company, which became world famous for its colorful zigzag knitwear once his children became involved in the business back in the 1960s. The children, with Vittorio's leadership, expanded the fashion house into a full global brand, and their trademark zigzag patterns became as identifiable as Burberry's plaid or Gucci's double G motifs. High-profile fans of the label include the Duchess of Cambridge and Kate Moss. If we go to Venezuela, Los Roques is a breathtaking archipelago and protected natural area located off the northern coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea, known for its pristine white sand beaches, crystal clear turquoise waters, and vibrant coral reefs. Back in 2013, it was a haven for the super wealthy from all over the world, a perfect playground for Missoni and his group. The alarm was first raised after the plane failed to land in the capital city of Caracas so they could take a plane to Italy. The plane they flew on was a 44-year-old Briton-Norman islander, and there were 6 people on the plane in total, including the crew. Initially, most people accepted the idea that the plane had crashed into the Caribbean. The Missoni's children, however, and especially their 28-year-old son, Ottavio, wasn't so sure. He thought that an accident was the least plausible theory, and that suspicious discrepancies made a possible kidnapping theory much more likely. Ottavio and the family said that because the plane was so light, it would have broken up into a million pieces when it crashed into the sea, leaving an obvious field of debris. But after an exhaustive search was conducted by both air and sea, nothing was found floating near the area. And then there was also a related series of unusual cell phone activity. On January 6th, the day after the plane disappeared, the phone that belonged to passenger Guido Foresti pinged his son, showing that the phone was back in range after being unreachable earlier that day. Also a day later, calls made to Foresti and his wife Ella Scalvenzi rang a good 10 times before going to voicemail, showing that her phone was also at least momentarily in range. Italian newspapers also reported that a series of calls were made from both phones belonging to the Forestis at noon, the day the plane disappeared. Were they abducted and taken to a nearby island? That's a theory that was bolstered when a piece of luggage with a Missoni logo, and which later proved to be from the party, was found off the Dutch Caribbean island of Curaçao, about 250 kilometers, or about 150 miles, away on January 29th, 3 weeks after the plane disappeared. Speculation was that they'd been taken and that their luggage was thrown overboard to throw people off their trail. According to Venezuelan air traffic control, the last known location of the plane was 11 miles from the Los Roques airport. With that location, the plane would most likely have crossed an area of the Caribbean potentially too deep for standard search and rescue missions. The Italian embassy in Venezuela, which was conducting its own search mission, extended its standard 8-day window on search and rescue missions as it waited for deep-sea equipment to reach the area. Venezuelan authorities, however, were sure that the plane was at the bottom of the sea due to either mechanical failure or bad weather, and that the Italian embassy was giving extra special treatment to the influential Missoni family. The Missoni family back in Italy was clinging to the hopes that their family might have been part of some sort of drug-related kidnapping and ransom scenario, and that their family members were somewhere nearby, alive. But those hopes would be dashed 6 months later. On June 27, 2013, it was confirmed that Missoni's plane was spotted in the Caribbean Sea, north of the Los Roques archipelago, in water about 76 meters or 250 feet deep. But the question was, were any bodies found in the wreckage? The Italian news agency ANSA first reported that 5 bodies had been found, including those of Vittorio Missoni and his wife Maurizia. Later, though, the agency walked back their story, saying that only 3 bodies had been found, that they hadn't been identified, and that DNA tests still had to be run to be sure who they'd found. ANSA also said that all of the recovered bodies were inside the plane with their seatbelts on. The end result, which is only a partial end, took more than 6 months to get. We also have to remember we're talking about authorities in Venezuela, a country where there is very strict control of official information. While they were waiting for confirmation, the Missoni family back in Italy was struck by tragedy again in May of 2013 when Vittorio's father, Ottavio, founder of the Missoni brand, died, not knowing whether his son was dead or alive. The family and the world would have to wait until October of 2013 to get some sort of definitive answers. On October 23, 2013, Venezuelan authorities reported that divers had recovered the remains of 5 people from the wreckage of an airplane that Italian fashion mogul Vittorio Missoni was flying in earlier that year. The plane was lying on the seabed, and the remains found reportedly included Vittorio Missoni, his wife Maurizia Castiglioni, their 2 friends, and the co-pilot of the plane. The body of the pilot had still not been confirmed. A year later, though, unusually, DNA testing of Vittorio Missoni's supposed remains were not coming back conclusive. But what did the official report say? The official report filed by the Venezuelan government says, and I quote, "While cruising at 5,400 feet at a speed of 120 knots, the aircraft entered an uncontrolled descent and crashed into the sea. Search and recovery operations did not find any trace of the aircraft nor the 6 occupants, and all operations were abandoned after 1 week. The Italian couturier Vittorio Missoni was among the passengers." In June 2013, debris was located at a depth of 75 meters, and 5 bodies were found on 17 October 2013. Eventually, the wreckage was recovered on 25 November 2013. The cause of the incident is inconclusive, but a sudden onset of violent turbulence caused by changes in winds over the water are most likely the cause. The case was closed shortly thereafter. But is turbulence and wind shear the only reason a plane would go down there? The Italian press didn't think so. Italian magazine Oggi investigated a kidnapping scenario and uncovered evidence that said that from 1983 to 2013, this wasn't the only time an airplane disappeared, leaving no trace in the Los Roques area. In 2008, 5 years earlier to the day, another small plane returning to the Venezuelan mainland from the archipelago disappeared with 14 people aboard, including 8 Italians. No wreckage was ever found, and only one body was recovered. And that wasn't the only other missing plane. In fact, in the 15 years from 1998 to 2013, there had been over 57 small airplanes that had gone missing. Was Los Roques the new Bermuda Triangle? Comparisons have been made between this area and the infamous triangle between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico that's had a very unusual and often unexplained rate of ships and planes that have gone missing. As much as I'd like to entertain the idea that this is the new Devil's Triangle, it seems that most evidence points it to being related to the South American drug trade, where planes flying too close to the water to evade radar detection have crashed due to coastal wind shear and the sudden turbulence caused by waves coming from nearby mountains. Venezuelan authorities, though, haven't been too enthusiastic about commenting on that theory, as the government there has very strict controls on information, and it would throw light on their drug problems and possibly hurt tourism. So what do we take from this incident? For me, the story of a kidnapping scenario, while certainly possible, sounded more like a son who didn't want to admit his father was gone forever. No ransom demands were ever made public, even now. Aviation authorities in the area, who probably know worlds more than I do about the incident, know all too well about wind shear and treacherous turbulence than some of us here with overactive imaginations. And while the status of the DNA tests was never made public after initial findings, what we do know is that the world lost a fashion icon in Vittorio Missoni and that his children lost their father. That there are so many question marks surrounding this mystery only make that harder to bear for those it affects directly. Friends, I thank you for listening to the Mysteries of Latin America podcast, where we tell people from all over the world stories of missing persons, mystical places, unusual objects, and the myths and legends of North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, share it if you like, and make sure to join us for the next episode coming very soon. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Audible, iHeartRadio, and a host of others. I'm Andrew Colon. Adios.